Testing. Okay. All right, that should be good. Okay, so tonight we're going to talk, first of all, about big concepts. And if you actually, hold on. First of all, we're going to talk about the task list. How many people here have looked at the task list yet?
Yeah.
It's on the website. We're going to talk about it more. The task list is absolutely critical. You have to. The task list is your master. The task list tells you what the test is going to be about. When they create the test, they first of all make a list of all the things they think that behavior therapists should know, and then they make that list, and then they develop the test from the list. So they sit there and go, okay, gotta make sure there's questions about everything on this list. So you need to know all the terms. There are some terms on it that you're not going to know. You're going to like, what the heck is that? There are terms on it that I didn't know. I didn't know what they were. So I learned about them. And generally the things you don't know are things you can learn. They're just things to memorize or things to, they're one-off easy things to learn. But you need to know the task list. Learn the task list. And to help you with the task list, I've got, I should have these separate. On the website, well, there is the task list, and there's also a handout that I'm going to give you today called the annotated task list, which is I went through the task list and I put in definitions of everything and put in little connections to videos for some stuff. Just you don't need a video of a kid being self-stimulatory, but it's interesting, especially for the concepts that are things we never do. Like there's something called time delay prompting. We never do time delay prompting, so we made a little video about time delay prompting, and you can look at what it looks like. It's just a 1-minute video. It's really quick. But this is the whole task list, and it's with definitions and explanations and sometimes some clinical discussions. So know the task list, use the annotated task list. This is your little study guide of all the things that are on the test. And if you have questions about it, I'm going to later, starting next week, I'm going to have office hours where you can call, we can do a meeting and you can see a screen, or you can just call me and you can ask me questions. We're going to do more study sessions online. And but know the task list. The task list is what the test is about. Okay? Let's see.
It's very helpful.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you.
Oh, my pleasure. Also, what else? The slides from tonight are up on the website, so you can look at those. These are all the videos that are that we're going to use tonight, and some more stuff. We're going to put some more up. So tonight, okay. So I said know the task list. And absolutely do. On the task list, there are a lot of concepts that are kind of related to each other, and there's some big concepts that you need to know. So the first thing we're going to talk about tonight are the big concepts. Some themes, some topics that cover a lot of the items from the task list. And after that, we'll talk about testing tips, just actual things about taking the test. Oh, and I've taken the test. I wanted to know what was on it, and so I want to know how hard or how easy the questions were, so I have frame of reference for helping you guys get ready for it. So I've taken the test, so the stuff I'm gearing to you is based on what the test is actually like. It's not just a guess. It's like, oh, I know what the test is like. So listen to Greg.
Did you pass, Greg?
I did. I got a really good score.
Good job.
I'm pretty proud. And then at the end, we'll talk about vocabulary and definition. So there's a bunch of one-off concepts on the task list that, like data collection by permanent product. That's actually not on the list, but like there are some terms that like I was unfamiliar with. If we can get to them tonight, we will. If it's just too boring and everybody's too tired, we will stop. But we'll get through the big concepts, we'll get through the testing tips, and then if we have time, and people can handle it, we'll go through definitions and vocabulary. But those are things you can learn just from the annotated task list that I'm handing out. So that's less important for us to get to tonight. So ask questions. Let's do this first. Let's ask questions as we go along. It makes it much more interesting for everybody. Check the website. Know the BCAT task list. I already talked about that. Use the annotated task list. I talked about that. Name the movie.
Simple Favor.
Simple Favor.
Haven't seen it yet. Did you see it?
Really good.
It looked really good, but it looked too good to be good. So I was like, I'm not spending money on it.
I thought,
if it's not good.
And the trailer seems like it gives away a lot, but the trailer only covers like the first 20 minutes. Okay, here's the first big concept you need to be familiar with. You really have to get the operant model of behavior, also called the antecedent behavior consequence model, or the ABC model of behavior. And guess what? That's what we do all the time. That's what a discrete trial is based on, is SDRSR. That's the operant model. That is the ABC model. And that's also called the three-term contingency. We've got a bunch of names for the same thing on the task list. The three-term contingency is another name for the operant model, which is another name for the ABC model, which is SDRSR, which is a discrete trial. There's 5 things that all kind of mean the same thing from the task list. But damn, that means you better know the operant model and understand it really well. So, so we're going to talk about some. Okay, behavior or a response. So the ABC is just sort of like the layperson's version of SDRSR. Okay, so we talk about behaviors or responses. They mean the same thing, or R's for short. And we're behaviorists, so we only study behavior. So we study observable and measurable behavior. We don't worry about thoughts and emotions and all the things that most psychologists worry about. We just worry about observable behavior and actions, things that 2 people can see and measure and take data on. That's all we care about. And then all we care about behavior are the things that happen right before it and the things that happen right after it. The things that happen right before behavior are called antecedents or SDs, and the things that happen right after behavior are called consequences or reinforcing stimuli. When I say right before, I mean 10 seconds or less before a behavior, and right after pretty much means 10 seconds or less after behavior. That's pretty much all we focus on when we're doing therapy. And what's funny, and some of these notes are just for if you're reviewing these. So this just says SD and R. These are all synonymous terms that we're using here. So we use SDRSR when we're use the operant model when we're teaching new skills. So that's a regular discrete trial. But we also use the same model when we're dealing with problem behaviors. It's exactly the same model. When you take ABC data, antecedent behavior consequence, that's SDRSR. So just the way we break down a behavior and use operant to teach new skills, we also look at behavior in the same perspective. So we look at the child's behavior, we look at what happens right before the bad behavior, and we look at what happens right after the bad behavior. And we take data on the behavior and what happens right after and what happens right before. And when we teach new skills, we measure we pick a skill and then we modify the reinforcers and we modify the discriminator stimuli, the SDs. So everything we do, everything on this test is based on the operant model, studying behaviors, studying what happens right before and what happens right after. And then we're just going into more detail on that. That's just what I say, the big idea. Everything we do is studying and manipulating SDs and SRs. It's actually kind of just, I'll even say it again. Every reductive procedure we use is manipulating SDs and SRs. Every therapeutic procedure to increase behavior is manipulating SDs and SRs. That's all we do. We don't do anything else. We don't talk about emotion and maybe if a child feels good about themselves, they'll be more likely to participate in class. It's like, no. What are the SDs that will make it work? What are the SRs that will make it work? Or what are the SDs and SRs that are causing behavior problems? And that's all it is. Which seems like a really crazy narrow view, but it is actually the most effective way of dealing with the most severe behavior problems and teaching kids who have the biggest deficits. So, and that's what the research says. Okay, and this is just what I said. So we use the operant model to increase behaviors, to find out why a behavior occurs, and to decrease bad behaviors. We'll talk about finding out why bad behavior occurs pretty quick. We already said it, but have a definition of behavior. They're for sure going to ask you a question about what is this a behavior or not, or what is a behavior. So, easiest, shortest definition I know, it's observable and measurable actions. If a dead person can do it, it's not a behavior. It's sort of it's called the dead man's rule, which is kind of not appropriate anymore. But laying, not moving is not a behavior. Rotting is not a behavior. So if you can't see it and a dead person can do it, it's not a behavior. Okay. So everything's in the ABC operant model. Okay, basic concepts, reinforcement and punishment. So there's 2 kinds of consequences. There's 2 main kinds of consequences, reinforcers and punishers. And reinforcers, by definition, is a consequence that increases the future probability of a behavior. So reinforcers, by definition, increase behavior. Any stimulus that occurs after a behavior and the behavior increases is a reinforcer. Even if we think it's nasty or yucky, or we don't like it, if the behavior goes up, it's a reinforcer. And any stimulus that causes a behavior to go down, oh, my ear just popped. I was like, I didn't realize I had a weird sound in my head, or I was like, but I was just like, my voice sounds weird. It was like, oh, my ear popped, and now I was like, oh.
You could hear.
Nice. Okay, and a punisher is a consequence that decreases the probability of behavior. So the 2 easiest ways to break down, the first 2 ways to break down consequences are punishers and reinforcers. Punishers decrease, reinforcers increase, just by definition. Okay, now the trickier part is you can break them down into 2 different types. So there's 2 different types of reinforcers and 2 different types of punishers. There's a positive reinforcer and a negative reinforcer, and a positive punishment and negative punishment. So Positive reinforcement is presentation of, actually, I'm going to jump ahead one slide. In operant terms, in behavioral terms, positive and negative do not mean what they mean to everybody else. Positive and negative just mean present a stimulus and remove a stimulus. So positive means presentation of a stimulus, and negative means removal of a stimulus. It doesn't say anything about whether or not the stimulus is yummy or tasty or the child likes it. It just means presentation versus removal. So in terms of reinforcement, positive reinforcement is presentation of stimulus that increases the behavior, and negative reinforcement is removal of stimulus that increases the behavior. And in terms of punishment, positive punishment is presenting a stimulus, which decreases behavior, and negative punishment is removal of a stimulus. Now this is where the Quizlets are going to be helpful. They're just definitions you need to know and be able to spit them out really fast. Negative punishment isn't usually called negative punishment. Nobody's heard of negative punishment. It's called response cost. So if you respond, there's a cost. And positive punishment is very rarely called positive punishment. It's usually just called punishment in the real world. On the test, they may use those. They'll use negative punishment and positive punishment.
Okay, we're gonna ask you that.
So still do know them. So remember, positive is presentation of stimulus, negative is removal of stimulus, independent of whether or not the stimulus is pleasant or unpleasant. So, so we're trying to decide the concept, and one of the things you need to know for the test for sure is they'll present a very brief scenario, like a 2 or 3 sentence scenario, and they'll say, is this an example of, what's this an example of? Positive reinforcement, negative punishment, or positive punishment. So you need to know the definitions and be able to apply them to a very simple scenario. So here's a very simple scenario. Who's worked here the shortest amount of time in the room? Who's the newest hire? Then you guys are up. So what do you think the answer is? So mom's talking is what? I'm putting you on the spot. It's mean. It's totally mean. I am sorry.
Positive punisher.
Yes!
Alright, that's what I thought. I'm like,
That is
I'm
it.
like, yeah, I hope she's right, because that's what I thought.
That's an intentionally hard one because, like, the layperson would think that, like, well, mom's being positive. So yeah, it's a positive punisher. Very good. Excellent. Okay, let's do the next one. You're next.
Ooh.
Positive reinforcer. Very good. The behavior's going up, and the stimulus is presented. Excellent. Okay. Who's next? Who's worked here the longest? Christy. No. Never mind. We'll just see if anybody wants to volunteer. Jim, I'm putting that on the spot.
So that would be a positive reinforcer.
Yeah, very good. And I intentionally chose scenarios that where what the person in the scenario thinks is happening is not where parents are thinking the wrong thing. So, excellent. Okay. Aaron.
Negative punisher?
Yeah, very good. Dang, you guys
Such
are
fun
good.
example.
It's funny. I wrote,
So I'm like giggling, I'm like, flush that card down the road.
I can imagine.
I wrote these questions. It's really hard to write good test questions. And actually, like there's a higher level version of the BCAT test. They're having their alternative version of the BCBA test. And like I got to be a subject expert and got to help write the questions for the new test for the higher level. And it's really hard to write good questions. So I wrote really sloppy questions for the Roseville team last week, and they were really hard and they were not clear. And then I rewrote them, and they're much. I feel a lot more. Like we had people were just like going down in flames, and you guys are nailing it. Okay. This is a bad question, you can tell because it's long. It's poorly written because it's long. That's what I learned from test writing. All right, Danielle.
Negative reinforcer.
Negative reinforcer. Very good. So the behavior's going up, her studying's going up, and dad's talking is goes away when the stimulus is presented. Very good. Dang, guys. I am so happy. I am so happy. I think I just taught it better. I think I just reviewed it
I was
better.
gonna
Very good.
say, we got some good training people.
Okay, I wasn't even going to get into this because I thought it was going to be hard enough not to talk about it, but negative reinforcement kicks everyone's ass. Negative reinforcement is the concept that everybody has trouble with because it's just kind of weird. And it's weird because lay people use negative reinforcement, first of all, wrong all the time. Every school psychologist, every principal, every teacher thinks negative reinforcement is reinforcement for negative behavior. It's not at all. The problem, and one of the, don't try to remember this. I'm just going to talk about it just for the sake of it. Negative reinforcement is complicated because in order to do it, you have to both present a stimulus and take it away. So in the dad talking to the girl example, he has to start talking and stop talking. So how is it so it's both presenting and removing a stimulus. The answer is the removal of the stimulus is the consequence. He started talking before the behavior, and then he stopped talking when she was doing it or after she was doing it. It's only a consequence if it happens during or after the behavior. So if you're torturing somebody to make them talk, that's presenting a stimulus, then you stop torturing when they talk. But you started torturing them before they were talking, and you stopped them when they start talking. So it's when the removal occurs that makes it a negative reinforcement. Traffic ticket questions. Those are I think they'd probably take them all off the test. Traffic tickets are hard. So if you get a speeding ticket, you get a fine of $1,000 for driving 100 miles an hour, and you stop speeding, is that a negative punisher or a positive punisher? And it's hard because you're both presented with the ticket is presented and the money is taken away. So which is it? It's a bad question. So they tend to take those questions off. I would say probably it's negative punishment. You really don't care about the piece of paper. You care about losing $1,000. But anyway, negative reinforcement usually kicks people's asses. But just know the definitions. Name the TV show.
How much mother?
How I Met Your Mother.
Yes. I'm like, I know that living room.
Very good.
I know it.
Very good. Okay. The other big concept we're going to get into. First big concept today, all behavior should be interpreted solely in terms of SDs, Rs, and SRs. That's the first big concept we've already talked about. That's the operant model. That's the ABC model. Everything is interpreted in terms of just behaviors and what occurs right before them, what occurs right after them. The second big concept is all behaviors have a function that's maintained, and they're maintained because of that function. Every good behavior, every bad behavior the child has, that you have, that I have, if it's maintained for more than a little bit, it's because it has a function or a value to the person or the child. So what functions can behavior serve? Do you guys know? What are the four main, then oddly there's only four of them. What are the four main functions? Let me name one of the four functions.
Escape.
Escape? Exactly.
Avoidance.
Escape avoidance is the same thing.
Yeah.
High five. We got this.
Self-stimulatory, that's good. Self-stimulatory is also called automatic reinforcement. On the task list, they call it automatic. We call it self-stimulatory, but know that automatic and self-stimulatory are the same thing. Know that escape and avoidance are the same thing. Okay? Escape avoidance, automatic self-stimulatory, two more.
Access to a desired item.
Access to tangibles, or we call it concrete. So concrete reinforcer or access to tangibles, that's the third one. And the fourth one is the one the kids are...
You said concrete? You said?
Concrete.
Okay.
It's the same thing as access to tangibles.
Attention.
Yeah.
Attention. Boom. Okay. There's only, oddly, for everybody on the planet, for everything they do, that applies to you and me and every kid we work with, every behavior has a function, and the function is one or more of these four things. Everything can be broken down in terms of those functions, and you have to know those functions. You need core skill in taking the test, be able to review a little scenario like we did, and figure out whether you're talking about negative or positive reinforcement or punishment, and then also look at, and given a similar scenario, what is the function of behavior for the child? Okay? and I came up with the acronym. Nobody's done it before. ACEs. There we go.
Very
Remember, it's
good.
ACEs. Now the problem is the letters are wrong for the BCAT task list. So we say concrete and self-stimulatory, and they say tangible and automatic.
Okay.
But if you can do ACEs, you can go automatic, concrete, escape, self-stimulatory, and then, oh, okay, self-stimulatory is automatic and concrete tangible. So remember, for the 4 functions, ACEs. Mnemonics are amazing. Mnemonics are crazy good. So another way to think about it is, another way of saying function is value. Behaviors are maintained because they have a value for the child. So if a child hits herself in the face 600 times an hour, it seems crazy, but hitting herself in the face 600 times an hour is valuable to that child. It has a function, it's valuable. If a child's tantrum for 5 years, that tantruming is valuable. We assume that it's occurring for a reason, that it's rational, it's not crazy. There are no crazy behaviors, nothing occurs for no reason. It occurs for a function. It occurs because it has a function, because it has value to the child. So that's like the big concept. That's the name of the movie. Big Lebowski. Very good.
I did get one.
The Big Lebowski, like I love that movie, but it's one of those movies where if you the first time you watch it, you're like, but then when you watch it again, you love it. It's like I highly recommend it, but you're not gonna like it the first time you watch it. You haven't seen it. Okay, so there's no crazy behavior. Everything has a function. Every problem behavior has a function. Name the movie. Okay, so functional behavioral assessment. What is that? We'll review the big concepts today. First big concept, all behavior should be interpreted solely in terms of SDs, Rs, and SRs. Everything's operant. Everything on the test is going to be operant. All behaviors have a function. And the third big concept is, if you want to get rid of a behavior, it helps to learn its function. So if you want to choose a reductive procedure, and the task list has a bunch of reductive procedures, it will be very helpful to know which of those 4 functions, which of the ACEs is the function for the behavior. And determining if you study the ABCs and determine the function, that's called a functional behavioral assessment. So you study SDs, study the Rs, measure the behavior, figure out what the consequence is, and figure out the function of the behavior. That's a functional behavioral assessment. And sometimes you can just talk to a parent and you've done it. You've done the functional behavioral assessment. Sometimes you have to observe the child and you have to take a lot of data. It's very mysterious. But all you do, like we're going to do some FBAs in the room tonight. Some fundamental assumptions we already talked about. So know what an FBA is. That's one of the big definitions. That's studying the ABCs of target behavior in order to hypothesize what the function, one of the ACEs, behavior is. Okay, so we're going to do some little mini FBAs. Let me tell you about Jerry. Jerry is a 30-year-old male. This is a real guy, not a guy I work with, a guy I heard about from a psychologist named Izzy Perel, who used to be the clinical director at the Camarillo State Mental Hospital. Camarillo State Hospital, they generally have very severely impacted individuals. These are adults who are not able to live at home, not able to live in group homes. Jerry's 30 years old, and he started smearing feces. He had not smeared feces as a child, but he got to 30 and then he started smearing. And smearing is the worst. Smearing, it wrecks a ward, it just destroys everyone's morale. When you have an adult who's smearing feces on the walls and on the furniture, it's very hard to get the smell out, and it bums out the other clients and it bums out the staff, and it just wipes people out. And Jerry started to smear a lot, and they didn't know why he started smearing, and they studied the antecedents and they studied the consequences, and they figured out what the function of his smearing was. And I'll tell you this: they studied the antecedents, and they couldn't figure out any antecedents. Is that still recording? Is it still?
Yeah, red light's blinking.
Okay, I'm paranoid.
Yeah, I know. Should have checked.
Okay, so they studied the antecedents really carefully. They took data on the smearing, and it happened 2 or 3 times a day, and it had been 0, and then it went 2 or 3 times a day, and it had been maintained for a couple of months. So he was smearing a lot. No clear antecedents. It could happen in the morning, in the afternoon. It could happen during work time. It could happen during free time. It could happen while he was in bed before he got up in the morning. It could happen after he went to bed. It could happen during meals. It was just, the antecedents were totally random. Then they studied the consequences. And guess what? You guys know what the consequences were. You can already tell me what the consequences were without even seeing Jerry. What were the consequences?
There's
You didn't have to clean it up.
someone else had to clean it, or
Someone else
he
cleaned it up.
enjoyed the mess, like he had the mess all over his hands, like
Something else happened.
attention,
Like what?
people breaking out.
Something else happened. Something really obvious happened. And they didn't think about it. It was a mystery for a while, but then they just went, oh, holy crap.
People like the initial shock of like, I don't know, covering your nose or
Nope.
no.
No.
You didn't have to go to the bathroom anymore? Oh my gosh.
Possibly, but no. Something else really concrete always happened every damn time. And nobody could think of what it was. So don't feel bad.
And it's probably so simple.
It is so simple.
The smell.
It smelled, but that's not it.
You got in trouble.
That's not it.
It's the same person coming
That's not it.
If it is, that person's there all the time.
Just imagine the
Yes.
video of Jerry. What happens right after? Like,
It stays on.
I'm glad nobody got it because I thought it was like so freaking obvious. He got a shower.
Oh.
Every single time he got a warm shower. And guess what? It turns out there's nothing Jerry loves more than a warm shower. That's like the best. And someone else giving a warm shower because he didn't shower himself. It was like a massage, you know? It was like, let's get this off of here. And every time he did it, within 10 minutes, he's in the shower, getting the shower. Okay, so here's a little grid. So Jerry's at Camarillo State Hospital. The behavior is feces smearing. The antecedents, we couldn't figure out what the antecedents were. They were just random. They took data on the antecedents. The consequences, it turned out to be a warm shower. What's a warm shower? Positive reinforcement. That's a big positive reinforcer. And so what's the function of his feces smearing?
Concrete or tangible?
Concrete or tangible. Yep, that's it. Okay, so we're doing okay on time. Good. I swear, we were on negative reinforcement for half an hour the first time, so I am very happy. So remind me to give out you can download them. Oh, for the annotated task list, on the website, you can pull it up as a PDF, and the links are active, so you can see the videos and see the references and so on. But here's a printed out version as well, so that you can just have it to carry around and look over. Okay. Here's some little. You know what? I don't know if we actually have to do it. We're just gonna do it in the room. I think. Let's see. Okay, here's another one. Read over it. Oh. Wait, no, I thought it was not. Okay. Here's a silly one. Not doing well. Okay, now I'm going to be totally mean to Nicole and Christina again. Christina, what is the antecedent? Don't worry, I'm say that the antecedent is it's like there's a million antecedents. So what is the consequence? What is the consequence for John saying the gold is buried behind the gas station on 3rd Street?
I don't know. Now I'm second guessing myself.
Now talk it through. There's negative and positive, and there's punishment and reinforcement. First of all, is it punishment or reinforcement? Is the behavior punished or reinforced?
Reinforced.
Good. Was the stimulus presented or taken away?
Taken away.
Okay, so what's it called?
Negative reinforcement.
Negative reinforcement.
That's what I was gonna.
Good. Very good. Very good.
Oh my god, it's
Okay. Now, what was the function of his saying the gold is buried behind the station on 3rd Street? It has to be aces. You can do a 10. One of the four things.
Concrete. Well, oh. Yeah, well. Escape.
Escape. Good.
Well, yeah.
Okay. So then it was. Not being tortured is sort of, you can say concrete, but like concrete means a thing you can hold.
Yeah, or tangible.
So, or tangible. So good. Very good. Excellent. Okay. All right. Here's another one. Sydney on the left.
I'm trying to think it through. And you see me thinking too. What do you want? The consequence?
Well, let's
So
there's no clear antecedents, or there's multiple antecedents. Okay, so what's the consequence? What is the consequence? Like, physically, what is the consequence?
The consequence is that her aide is talking to her and explaining to her.
Perfect.
Which then would hypothesize the function being attention. That consequence would be, hold on, that was what I was thinking through. Let's see. So he's giving her the attention and it's increasing. So is that considered positive?
Positive what?
Trying to think. I'm trying not to look at what I wrote down. I'm trying to think about it. Increasing. So positive punishment.
What's happening to the behavior?
Behavior is increasing.
So no matter what, it's a form of...
Okay, positive reinforcement?
Yeah.
Okay.
Behavior's going up, it's a reinforcer. Behavior's going down,
You're right, it does get hot in here.
Well, when you're on the spot. Yeah.
Okay.
Very good. Okay, this is what I'm gonna... okay, very good. And you got the function, so...
Yeah, that was the easy one.
That's, well, not necessarily. It's positive and negative. Just like your brain is so programmed to think something different than what we mean by positive and negative in the situation.
Because like in my mind, I was going with punishment because he was like talking to her and telling her why. He's doing the punishment.
He's punishing.
So
he thinks he's giving negative consequences. So you're thinking it's that what somebody thinks is never what we're concerned about. Okay, this is a kind of a long one. I'll present really quick. So this is the girl who hits herself in the face 600 times an hour or more than that. So this is number of hits in the face per 5-minute period, and we graphed it by demand conditions. So this is when she's just like a morning at her house, when she's eating, her rate like around 10 hits to her face per 5 minutes. When her parents are putting demands on her to eat, then it goes up to 30 to 40. So parent demand leads to a higher rate of hitting herself. Then we kind of followed her around. First of all, when she's at home by herself, when she's at home and nobody's talking to her, like when I'm talking to mom and dad and she's off in the corner by herself, she doesn't hit herself at all. When she's at home during regular routine, which was this graph here, it's 240 times an hour. And that's, sometimes she's left alone, sometimes parents are telling her to do stuff. It's 240. Her parents told me that she didn't have any problems in Sunday school. I'm like, no way. So I went to Sunday school and she hit herself 570 times an hour. And then I told the Sunday school, and they were trying to get her to come to circle and do prayer and things like that. And so I told the Sunday school people, okay, well now for the next 20 minutes, just leave her alone. Don't make her do anything. If she wants to sit in the corner, she can sit in the corner. And the self-injury went to 72 times per hour. During speech and OT, where they're putting a lot of demands on her, they're like us. They're interface, asking her to do stuff. 780. Ignore the department store. That's too complicated. In the park, she just sat around, and if her parents kind of walked toward her, she'd start hitting herself again. She'd start hitting herself a lot. But if they kind of left her alone, she didn't so much. Okay, so.
Just for clarification, for my own nosiness, what is considered a punch? Is this one you actually did this because numbers are pretty serious.
Yeah. So it's like
So, wow.
About that hard. Not, no one blow would cause a bruise or
But
break
still.
the skin, but
Not like a
her,
little hit.
her fingers are kind of deformed from hitting herself, and she kind of builds up calluses on her face. So,
Oh.
so actually, this one is it's just too long for us to get into it tonight. But does anybody want to talk? Anybody want to talk it through?
If we have the time, I wouldn't mind.
Okay, good. All right. Mel, put you on the spot. So what do you? So what?
Just the kind.
What were the? Just physically, what were the consequences? That tend to follow the punches. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. There are no consequences in this data. I didn't present the consequences. You don't know what the consequences are. This is entirely sort of an antecedent evaluation.
Observation.
Yeah. So what tended to be the antecedents for the behavior?
Every time there was a demand placed on
Yep.
her.
Let's just jump to the hypothesized function. I mean, you know, so what do you think the function was?
Was it concrete? Tangible?
Mm-mm.
No.
So what,
Like
well,
the
why do
tension?
you, the antecedent is attention,
Escape avoidance.
escape avoidance. Yeah.
I just,
Okay.
no, I just thought about that.
So we don't know exactly what the consequences were because we took data on it, and we did take data on it. We did show that 98% of the time, if a demand was placed on her and she hit herself, the demand was withdrawn.
Mhm.
So, and so what was the consequence? The function was escape. What was the consequence for her hitting herself?
Would it be a positive reinforcement?
So it's reinforcement because the behavior is going up, being
Mhm.
maintained, but is the stimulus being if you could
A
compare it-
negative.
It's being taken away.
Well, the demand is being taken away.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I should present the demand data. That would make it clearer. So, pretty much self-injury is negatively reinforced. It's almost always done when demands are placed on kids. The demands are removed, and the behavior is maintained as escape avoidance from demand. So, I apologize. That's a really good example, and it's like actually one that I would normally like spend like half an hour on because like I can present lots of data, and it's a really interesting case. And we actually, Martin Mahoney, who's our director in Sacramento, did the intervention, which was really, really good, but it was so complicated we can't talk about it. It was like 5 different interventions, all at the same time. Is that okay?
For me, that's not me.
All right. You might have to know this. There's 3 basic types of FBAs. One is just indirect informant based, which is kind of what it sounds like. You just review data from, you just talk to the parents or talk to the teachers and find out what's going on and kind of hypothesize what the function of the behavior is. And a lot of times you can actually kind of get a pretty good idea. Direct descriptive is what we typically do, which is you actually see the child and you take data and you measure you measure the SDs and you measure the Rs and you measure the SRs and you take data and analyze that data. That's called direct or descriptive. And then an experimental FBA is where you actually manipulate the target behavior. So you actually change the environment in some way to see if the change in the environment changes the behavior. So don't worry about so you kind of optimize. You say, well, if the behavior is reinforced by attention, we'll give her a lot of attention for it. And if it's for escape, we'll let her escape every time. And if it's for concrete, we'll give her concrete every time. And if it's self-stimulatory, we'll leave her alone and she'll let her do nothing and see. Because if it's self-stimulatory, it doesn't matter what we do, she'll do it at the same rate. Mm-hmm. And with her, she did it at 0 when she was left alone, so we knew it wasn't self-stimulatory. Okay, so just 3 basic types. 1, just somebody tells you and you hypothesize. 2, you collect lots of data and analyze the data. And 3, you actually manipulate the environment in some way to manipulate the behavior to see if you can explain it. Name that. Pancake. Good. Partial credit.
But it's like, it looks like it's like a donut too.
That's a Cinestat from IHOP.
Oh, I
My
don't know.
daughter ordered last weekend, and I was like,
Ugh.
she said, that sounds so good. I'm like, I don't know. But that is so good.
I'm a
Go to IHOP and get a Cinestat.
I like
It-
Denny's.
It is, maybe they have them. I don't know. I like Denny's too. But if you like cinnamon rolls, like you know how the middle of a cinnamon roll is the best part of a cinnamon roll? It's got the most stuff and the whole pancake tastes like the middle of a cinnamon roll. It's like, it's all good. It's got all the cinnamon and butter and sugar stuff slotted all over it, and the cream cheese all over it. Oh my goodness. So I highly recommend the Cinna Stack. Okay. Another big concept to know really, really, really well is extinction. Know what extinction is. Extinction is the removal of all reinforcement for a target behavior. It's taking away all the reinforcers. So it's a consequence, and it's just remove all reinforcement. Know what extinction means. Know what extinction means. So if you're ignoring a behavior, you're putting it on extinction. You're removing all reinforcement for it. And on the task list, oddly, they break this down in a way I've never heard of before. I never bothered to. They have, because they have extinction for 3 of the functions of behavior. So they have attention extinction, which is extinction for behavior maintained by attention. They have access to tangible extinction, which is removal of tangible rewards for targets, for the target behavior. So it's extinction for behavior maintained by tangibles. And they have escape extinction, which is extinction of behavior maintained by escape. Okay, they just take 3 of the ACEs and they have their own special name for their extinction for those things. Escape extinction is kind of the funny thing. So escape extinction means if a child is, and actually we did escape extinction with the girl that was hitting herself 600 times. So like, instead of letting her go, we really lowered the demands placed on her, but we did not let her get out of them. So we would just place like 1 demand every 3 minutes to do something she relatively liked, and she'd still hit herself, but we just ignored it. We maintained the demand and made her do the thing, and we lowered her self-injury for a very low rate of demand for a very easy behavior, and then we gradually increased the demands placed on it. So that's more complicated than you need to know. So 3 kinds of extinction based on 3 of the functions. Why is there no automatic extinction? Why do you want to put automatically reinforced behaviors on extinction?
It's hard to prevent a control levels, isn't it? It's self-storatory.
No. You're getting towards the right idea. Yeah, Jim.
So there's no antecedent?
Nope. So what's the reinforcer for automatic or self-stimulatory? It's sort of in the name automatic. So kids self-stim because they like to self-stim, right? It's not, they don't do it for attention, they don't do it to get something, they don't do it to escape something. It's just like, I like it. Like everybody here is stimming a little bit. Everybody's like, I caught you. So you're the person I looked at to give the example, but you're doing a pen thing right now, and everybody stims all the time. And kids with disabilities stim a lot more because they got a lot less appropriate things to do. Mm-hmm. So, but you're not doing it because you're being reinforced for it. You're just doing it because your nervous system actually, it's unpleasant not to do that. Like if you look at a lecture of people, 300 people, they're all doing something. Everybody, literally. Constantly doing something. That's self-stimulatory, and the reinforcer is automatic. It's actually kind of unpleasant not to. So you can't if you ignore that behavior, it doesn't go away. You can't put automatically reinforced self-stimulatory reinforced behavior on extinction because they'll just keep doing it. That's one of the ways we figure out if a behavior is self-stimulatory is we leave the kid alone and don't put any demands on them and put them in a room by themselves. And if they keep doing it, then we know it's self-stimulatory. They're not doing it to get something. So there is no automatic extinction. That's the answer to that. Okay, 2 concepts related to extinction. Extinction burst, you know what it is, and spontaneous recovery. So extinction burst is a phenomenon where as soon as you put a behavior on extinction, as soon as you start ignoring a behavior, the child or the mouse or the rat immediately starts trying harder. And it's just, it just makes sense. This thing used to work and it's not working, like what the hell? Hey, come on. You used to jump when I hit myself in the face, and now you're ignoring me? I'll hit myself harder. Now what do you think? And so you will always get an extinction burst. It's really important clinically to warn parents that as soon as we tell you ignore tantrums, your child is going to tantrum more. They're going to get in your face and let you know that they are not happy. But if you keep the behavior on extinction, don't give the reinforcers, it will trail off. Then you also get something called spontaneous recovery. So suppose we extinguished this girl's self-injurious behavior to demands, and now we can put a demand on her. She doesn't hit herself. No matter what, within a week, it's gonna pop up again. We're gonna ask her to do something, and she's gonna start hitting herself again. And it's called spontaneous recovery. And evolutionarily, it kind of makes sense. Or you don't need to know the whys of it, but it just makes sense for if someone has a very valuable behavior. it shouldn't just disappear quickly. Your nervous system, your brain kind of goes like, well, I'm going to keep trying it every once in a while because it worked for years. I'd be stupid not to try it again once in a while. So that's sort of what spontaneous recovery is. It's in all organisms. It's in rats and mice and people and so on. There's, in all organisms, there's the burst, and in all organisms, there's spontaneous recovery. And the trick is, when the spontaneous recovery occurs, you just keep ignoring it, and then it'll trail off. So no extinction burst, no spontaneous recovery. Know what extinction means. It's the removal of reinforcement for an operating behavior. Okay, motivating operations. This is one of those concepts that sounds really complicated and hard and abstract and weird, but it's really simple. So a motivating operation is an internal state that affects whether or not you're going to respond to SDs and NARs. It affects whether or not you're going to do therapy well with somebody. And so what would be an internal state that would affect whether or not a child's going to follow direction or enjoy a reinforcer? What could be going on inside them that they're not going to work for you anymore, or they're not going to do well, they're not going to do what they're supposed to do in school, or they're not going to do something they usually enjoy?
I just got confused.
Good. Okay.
Yeah, you just confused me.
Okay. So, if a kid's sick, they're not going to work for food reinforcers, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a motivating operation.
Okay.
Being ill means, okay, if the child usually works for food all morning, and you come in and they've got a cold, it's like
So
they're
like,
not going to work.
so like, if they didn't sleep well the night before and they're tired.
If they're
That's gonna
tired,
be one.
that could be actually, that's a good one. I forgot about that one. What's the thing that like kicks, like you come to the house and you're like, oh damn, I have to do therapy now, but the kid just fell asleep, or
Throw up.
ate. Kid just
No.
ate. It's like, you don't want to do therapy right after a big lunch. Please don't give him the biggest, don't let him eat 17 waffles before I come to the house at 9 o'clock. So being full, being hungry, being sick, being tired, being bored, being medicated or intoxicated, being depressed, being scared, being angry. These are all things that could affect whether or not you're going to do therapy, whether or not you're going to be responsive to an SD. And you're not going to be responsive because you don't want the SR anymore. You don't want the reinforcer anymore. So things that affect how much you like a reinforcer are motivating operations. And just to make it complicated, they break them down into two kinds. There's establishing operations and abolishing operations. So establishing operations are just an MO that makes you more likely to do something, and an abolishing operation is an MO that makes you less likely to do something. So if you're hungry, you're more motivated to work for food. If you're bored, you may be more motivated. If you're deprived in some way, you may be more motivated. So that's called establishing operation. And then abolishing operation, for the child is less likely to respond, is being full, being sick, being depressed. So it's a really easy concept, just motivating operations, establishing, abolishing, just something that makes you less likely to respond to a reinforcement, or more likely to respond to a reinforcement. And you can use it therapeutically, like like you're not going to try the hard, new, very difficult program right after, that requires lots of reinforcement right after the child just had chocolate sundae. Or, just know what an MO is, and it's MO for short. Okay. Oh, and so everything we've been talking about today, and all the notes that I have on the annotated list refer to our kids and what we do, but everything I'm talking about in terms of all the operant theory and the motivating operations and extinction stuff, it applies to all organisms that walk around. It applies to everybody and everything. Everything living pretty much that has a skeleton anyway. So, just for information. Name the movie.
No idea.
Now we know there's only one Big Lebowski fan in the room, so that's Big Lebowski again. See it, but then see it again. Okay. All right. Differential reinforcement procedures. So we're almost through with the big topics. Actually, we're doing pretty good. Oh crap! Do they have the video? No. Come back here. Okay. So differential reinforcement procedures are reductive procedures. They don't sound like it because the word reinforcement is in the title, but differential reinforcement is a form of reductive procedure. There's 4 kinds you need to know about. Good news is 3 of them are almost the same thing. Well, there's DRA, DRI, FCT, and DRO. So let's talk about DRA first. So differential reinforcement of alternative behaviors. So in this, we reduce a target behavior by reinforcing an alternative behavior that serves the same function as the problem behavior. Remember, we're talking about functions. We really care about functions. So if you want to get rid of behavior A, teach the child to do behavior B that serves the same function and is more appropriate. Okay? So, I don't know, do you guys have any kids like that hate babies?
Yes.
Okay. Everybody does. I don't, our clients hate babies. Or at least they hit babies.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that they hate babies. I think there's, well, what do you think that, okay, so we have a lot of kids who hit babies. What do you think the function of hitting babies is for most kids?
I think the one that I can think of, they were probably targeting it like the reaction of a baby. Like if you hit a baby, you're pretty much always gonna get a cry out of it.
That's possible. Okay, I was gonna say, but there's another one. Attention. If you smack the baby, the infant that can't even move, like mom is on you like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like as guaranteed as the hot shower, and it's faster. It's like as soon as you start smacking the baby, mom is on you, and mom is picking you up and carrying you around, and maybe she's talking to you sternly, but most of our kids don't care about that. They kind of just like, mom picking me up and talking to me is great, no matter what mom is saying, and mom is never that mean. She's not. So a lot of baby smacking has a function of getting attention. So if we wanted to use a DRA for baby smacking, what would be an alternative behavior we could teach to get attention that could replace baby smacking?
Telling the baby a joke. That's what we're doing.
That's what I'm thinking of.
I have a lot of questions about that. But, well, okay, but if the function is getting mom, so let's say specifically, I'm talking about a case where the function of the behavior is getting mom's attention. What could we teach as an alternative to smacking the baby?
Well, if there is verbal, like if the child able to speak, teaching them the pragmatic language to go over and ask for the attention or wants and needs,
Absolutely.
if it's there.
Absolutely. And what if the child can't speak?
Kiss the baby?
But mom's not going to respond to that. Mom's going to go like, oh, that's nice. And she's going to stay on the phone. Look at that. That's great.
Maybe like interact and play with a baby.
No. She wants attention from mom. What's going to get attention from mom?
Mom
Can
playing with her. Going up to mom.
Going up to mom and...
Can't you ask mom to give the baby a toy or something?
Everybody's worried about the baby. So don't worry about doing something with the baby.
Yeah.
Like
a hug
or like if they're not.
Yeah, that's how I'm
If
like.
they're nonverbal...
Mom and like try to like get her attention. Like,
Yeah, so you just like this.
Tug.
So instead of hitting the baby, just go, hey, do that, and get attention. And that means if you don't attend to me now, I'm
I'm
going to
gonna
go
go hit the baby.
Exactly.
So this is one or the other.
Yeah. So you want to pick a behavior that serves the same function. I think everybody's worried about the baby. Everybody's worried about like, let's keep the baby happy. But no, it's not about the baby. It's about the function of the baby hitting, which is getting attention. So if you want to get rid of behavior A, reinforce behavior B that serves the same function as behavior A, and then that behavior will theoretically replace the problem behavior because the child will get what he wants doing something different, and it'll be maintained because he's getting the thing he wants.
Now, what happens if the child is looking for that negative response, where the child's not looking to play with mom, but is looking for the negative response mom's giving it?
Or he
that
likes
ever-
the baby to cry.
You're saying negative in the bad way, so don't say negative because that means
Like,
something
so
different.
Where mom comes over and has that stern voice and is yelling, picks up and removes, rather than going over and playing.
I would suspect that the client likes the stern voice, but also would like a not stern voice. Or even if they would like the stern voice, they would like something. They would like something. Then I would say like give them the stern voice for something else. Just like I would say give them another way of getting the stern voice, and that could just be like, and then. But I think it's probably the stern voice and the interaction and the facial time, the face time.
I just like being the person that asks the.
Oh no,
questions,
that's very good. Kids, that's very good. And kids love negative attention. Kids, kids love attention of all kinds, whether
Yeah.
it's like it's pleasant or unpleasant from
Yes.
our perspective. I went to a movie with this is back when I did things like go to movies with clients, but I went to a movie with a client and his dad, and it was like Land Before Time or something, like a long time ago. And we went to the movie and we went to lunch, and the dad said, "So, did you like the movie?" And the kid said, "Oh, I wasn't watching." The dad said, "You didn't watch it? None of it? None of it. 2 hours? You don't watch any of it?" "I didn't watch any of it." And the kid was just loving it. He just loved pushing dad's buttons and getting dad to be all mad about it and stuff. So, kids like the negative verbal, the unpleasant, like punishing not punishing, the nasty, aggressive, stern verbal is very reinforcing. It's just as reinforcing as,
Yeah.
and I think it's what our kids know how to get.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I used to push my dad's buttons all the time. I used to love when my dad yelled at me, because dad never yelled, and when he yelled, I laughed.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
like, I used to, like, I can.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, there's two subtypes of DRA. Let me talk first about functional communication training. If the alternative behavior you're teaching, if the B behavior is communication in some way, it's called functional communication training. It's just DRA, a specialized DRA, and most DRAs are communication, so most DRAs are functional communication training. So just break DRA down into two subtypes. One is functional communication, teaching the other is DRI, which is differential reinforcement of incompatible behaviors. And that means you teach a behavior that's physically incompatible with the problem behavior. So we had a client who didn't have any language and was very self-stimulatory, and one of his favorite stims was slapping things. So he'd slap his leg or he'd slap a table, and he just liked it, and he would like look at his hand and kind of like, you can feel a burn when you do that. It's kind of an interesting thing. But he it was pretty noisy. And parents just got used to it at home, but when they went to a restaurant, it was terrible. Like, you go into Denny's and you have a 16-year-old kid smacking the table as hard as they can, and it's like the whole restaurant is looking at him. So we said, well, let's get him another self-stim that will serve the same, another behavior will serve the same function, which is self-stimulatory, that is incompatible with table slapping. So what's an alternative behavior that's incompatible with table slapping? That's kind of self-stimulatory. I mean, there's a million stimuli, but we taught him to play Tetris, or to manipulate a Tetris game on a Game Boy, where you have to use two fingers, use two thumbs, and he didn't really play it very well, but he liked it. So he just like lost over and over and over really fast. But he liked that as much as he liked table slapping or slapping, and he didn't get they saved the Tetris game for going out, so it was supposed to be kind of special. So we taught a new behavior that replaced the table slap that served the same function as the table slapping. It was physically incompatible with table slapping. You can't do both at the same time. So that was a DRI. If we taught a child to do this in order to get attention, that would probably be called functional communication training. That's communication of some sort. It's hard to come up with DRA. Well, I guess the DRIs are not communication, are they? Or at least the one I said is not. So most DRAs are functional communication training. Now the tricky one. This is the one I got wrong on the BCAT test. I did not know this. I was wrong for 33 years. DRO is differential reinforcement of other behaviors. It's also called omission training. So DRO is when you reinforce a child for not doing the problem behavior. They don't have to do anything else. They can literally do nothing. But as long as they don't do the bad behavior, the problem behavior, for X amount of time, then they get a reinforcer. So if you have a child, we had a child who was swearing in class. Like swearing, like no messing around, like X-rated, very explicit sexual stuff. And it was funny. It was a very small school district up in the mountains where they didn't have anywhere to send him out of the class. So he was just in this class with a bunch of other little 7-year-olds, and he's just using every amazing thing. And it's kind of like a funny movie. They're just watching the class and they're being through it. So we said, okay, every time you don't swear for 3 minutes, you get a token, and then you get 10 tokens, you can play Call of Duty. And so then he was, okay. And then it took a little while, but he learned, okay. He was high function enough that we just kind of explained to him, here's the deal. You don't do this, you get a reward. Get enough rewards, you can play Call of Duty. So you can also use it with nonverbal lower functioning kids, and it's used for self-injury sometimes. Where if a child who's very self-injurious, like hundreds of times per hour, you can reinforce them every 10 seconds they don't hit themselves. And then after they're not hitting themselves for 10-second periods, then you can move up to 15 seconds and then 20 seconds and increase the reinforcement a little bit. So it's called omission training because you reinforce them for omitting the behavior, for not doing the problem behavior. So the critical thing is not doing the problem behavior for a specific amount of time, and instead of reinforcing an alternative to the problem behavior. And so as soon as you hear DRO, go DRO mission training. I thought DRO and DRA were the same thing. I just thought other and alternative, that's the same thing, right? I just treated them the same way. Didn't know they're different. Be careful of omission training. So this is for when you're looking at it later. Name the movie. Searching.
Oh, Searching.
What's up?
Did you see that one?
It's good.
Ooh,
Yeah, I like
it was good
It's fun.
too. I didn't see
It's
it.
fun. It's totally original. You know, I mean, we saw it in the theater because my kids want to go see it. But it's like, I don't know, it's smart. They're smart like 80% of the way through. Kind of like they couldn't quite make it make sense all the way through. But it's about a dad whose daughter disappears, and he had to go through her phone or computer and to track down where she went. And it doesn't sound that interesting, but it's very clever. Okay, we're almost done with the okay, schedules of reinforcement. Two basic kinds of schedules of reinforcement we've got: continuous reinforcement and intermittent reinforcement. Continuous reinforcement is one-to-one reinforcement. Continuous just means one reinforcer for every behavior. So that's the very high, rich level of reinforcement we do when we're teaching brand new behaviors and brand new difficult behaviors. And intermittent reinforcement is anything that's not continuous. So if there's any schedule that's not a reinforcer for every target, for every behavior, if there's not an R for every, an SR for every R, then it's intermittent in some way. There's always four classic types of reinforcement schedules: fixed ratio, variable ratio, fixed interval, and variable interval. Nobody ever uses interval schedules clinically, so I'm going to tell you, don't worry about interval schedules. They're hard to understand, they're weird, we don't use them because they just don't make sense. They're interesting from a research perspective and from a how animals learn perspective, but they're not interesting clinically. A fixed ratio schedule, though, is you give a reinforcer at a fixed rate every time the child, at a fixed rate from the target behavior. So a fixed ratio 3 is you give a reinforcer every third time. A variable ratio 3 is you give the reinforcer on average every third time. We all kind of do a lot of variable ratio reinforcements. Like we don't give a big reinforcer every time. Well, we give a good every time. We don't give like a toy or a primary every time for most kids. We go good, big reinforcer, good, big reinforcer, good. That's a variable ratio. So on average, we give a bigger reinforcer in various rescues, but every 3 or 4 or 5 responses, depending on where the kid is in the program and what the child's functioning level is. So just remember, fixed ratio is a fixed ratio, like 3 to 1, 4 to 1, 5 to 1, whatever. Variable ratio is on average 3 to 1, on average 4 to 1 on average. So fixed, variable means average ratio. You totally don't have to know this for the class, but in grad school I had an animal learning class, and I read a study where they had a rat pressing a bar for his food, and they wanted to see the biggest ratio they could get him to for his food. So basically they wanted to see how many bar presses they could get him to do in order to get all his food for one day. So he had to press, so like how many times can you make him press the bar for the biggest reinforcer, and it was like they took a rat up to like 17,000 to 1. So he would press the bar 17,000 times for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours.
I was so hungry.
So at 9 o'clock at night, all his food popped out, and he'd eat it, and he'd go to sleep. He got up the next morning, press the bar 17,000 times. So like that's what we all do, right? I mean,
Poor thing.
Yeah.
I eat whenever I want.
well,
That poor little rat.
but you get paid once a month.
No, I got you.
Yeah.
That poor thing though.
Okay,
I have a
so
heart for mice.
know about continuous reinforcement versus intermittent. Know what that means. 1-to-1 versus not 1-to-1, and fixed ratio and variable ratio. Don't worry about fixed interval and variable interval. They're really strange. Do worry about these ideas though. Continuous reinforcement produces the fastest learning and is good for teaching new skills. So the richer the reinforcement schedule, the more response you're going to get. The more reinforcement, the more behavior, right? So we use that for kids who are just starting therapy. We use that for very challenging and difficult programs. If it's like, oh, I hate prepositions or I hate verbal, then we get a lot of reinforcement. We do continuous reinforcement for the hardest programs. However, intermittent schedules are the most resistant to extinction. Okay? The problem with continuous schedules is as soon as you stop reinforcing, the child's like, hey, I'm not getting reinforced anymore. And they're more likely to stop responding, and the behavior is likely to extinguish. Whereas if they're on a very thin intermittent schedule where they're only getting reinforced every 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 times, then it's harder for them to tell, like, oh, I'm not getting reinforced all the time. And they'll maintain the behavior for a longer period. The analogy I like is compare a vending machine to a slot machine. A vending machine has continuous reinforcement. You put your money in, you get food. Put your money in, you get food. And the first time you put your money in and the food doesn't come out, you're like, whoa, this vending machine is broken. Like, maybe you'll try one more time to put your money in. And everybody laughs at that. It was like some people are like, I'll try 3 or 4 food. But you know you're on extinction with a vending machine right away because the schedule is continuous. Whereas with a slot machine, you could be on a slot machine that's been disconnected for hours before you realize, like, oh, there's no money coming out of the slot machine. It's a very, very, very thin reinforcement schedule. So you don't extinguish on the slot machine, you extinguish immediately on the vending machine, which is continuous reinforcement. So use continuous reinforcement to start new skills and use intermittent reinforcement over time. So when we transition to intermittent reinforcement before we try and transition a skill or generalize a skill to the real world. Because once kids get out in the real world, the reinforcement is going to be much thinner than it is in therapy. So again, these are like the Bible of ABA is continuous intermittent reinforcement and continuous reinforcement extinguish, richer reinforcements extinguish, richer reinforcement schedules extinguish faster, thinner reinforcements are maintained better. Okay. All right. This is the last one, I think. And then we're going to take a break. And we're doing good. We're doing very good. Does anybody know about these? You do, I know. I hated that. I read about, when I was in undergrad and grad school, I read about Skinner's, Mann's, tax, interverbals, and echoics. I'm like, I just didn't even want to know about them because they're such weird words. Like, I don't understand what the hell that is. I have no frame of reference for that. And so I don't want to know about it. I was very closed-minded about this. And it's interesting. Skinner chose these terms. He made up these names because he's the one who came up with reinforcement and positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, and everybody's confused by those terms. Everybody means something different. So he came up with his verbal operant theory, and he said, I'm going to make up brand new names because I'm sick of people misunderstanding negatives and positives and so on. I'm going to use words that nobody's heard before. Because then if someone is saying manned and tact, I know they're talking about what I'm talking about because I defined it. So that's why they're very, very strange. That's just me talking about that stuff. So the basic idea, I'm going to give you the overview, and then I'm going to give you the cheat. Okay, I'll close with the cheat for answering real quick. So Skinner came up with what he called verbal operants. He decided to break down verbal behavior into different categories. He gave them, there's a bunch of them, but there's only 4 that we need to know about. And he defined the operants by their antecedent, by their SD. So let's start down here at the bottom, because it's easier. So if I say, if someone has a verbal behavior, and the SD for that verbal behavior, and that verbal behavior is an exact copy of someone else's verbal behavior, it's an echoic. So I say cookie. Good. Her cookie is called an echoic. It's an exact copy of what I said. It's an echo. Right? Easy peasy. The SD was cookie, and she said cookie. It's an echoic. Now if I say, now the next category is called intraverbal. Echoic is a special kind of interverbal, but don't worry about it. Intraverbal just means the SD for verbal behavior is someone else's verbal behavior. So if I say, what time is it?
7:30.
7:30. Good.
I made a guess.
Okay. So the SD was a verbal for me, her response was verbal, so that's called an intraverbal. And that again, that's interverbal, that makes sense, right? Okay. Now let's do the harder one, tact. A tact is a verbal, these are all verbal behaviors, it's a verbal behavior where the SD is a non-verbal interaction with the environment. It's a non-verbal stimulus in the environment. A tact is by definition, its SD is never somebody else talking. Okay? And the example, a skunk enters a room, and I say, that's a big skunk. I saw the skunk. And tact comes from contact. You have contact with something. You have visual contact, you have auditory contact, it can be a smell or whatever. Non-verbal stimulus that occurs in the environment causes you to talk. That talking is called a tact. And then the last one is a mand. That comes from demand. And the SD for this is the weird one. This is the interesting one. The SD for a mand is an internal state. It's a motivating operation, essentially. It's being hungry. It's being deprived of something. It's wanting something. So it's something internal to you. You didn't see it. You didn't see anything. Nobody said anything. Just inside you, you're bored or you're deprived in some way. You're hungry. You're sick. And you say something related to that. You could say, and almost always it's a demand. It's you want something. Like, I want food. I'm hungry. Let's get out of here. I hate this place. Let's go. Let's go. So man comes from demand. So, all right. So here are the definitions that we were looking at right there. Now let's look at some movie clips and determine what we were looking at. Oh, another thing I learned from doing this the first time, the word or the phrase that I want you to say as attacked or a man is going to be up on the screen at the end. So you don't have to like go, oh, was that it? Was that it? But at the end, I'll show you. It'll say on the screen what it is I want you to answer a question about. So don't worry about trying to memorize the whole sequence and go. Oh. So this one isn't that long, but.
Hello? I'm afraid we're not in Kansas anymore.
Toto, I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore. Is that a man attacked, interverbal, or an echoic? Christine. I have so many. Look at you look at the rules up here.
Yeah, I have.
Whatever you can rule them out too. Like what is it definitely not?
It's definitely not. Well, is it tact?
Yes. Very good. Very good. Excellent. It sounds really mean, but I hope you're not like the smartest person in the room because you're getting you're getting everything. No, I mean, no. I'm randomly picking people who have been here the least amount of time, and I'm choosing you guys because you've been here the least because because it'll be the hardest for you. So you're sort of my gauge of. But if you're like this savant who's like IQ of 190 and like everything's easy for you, and then it's like you're my gauge. My gauge will be off. But okay, very good. So it can't be an echoic.
Yeah.
It can't, because there's nobody else talking. It can't be an interverbal, nobody else talking. So it's a man or attacked. She didn't really seem to be wanting anything, you know. So it's attacked. Very good. Anybody want to shout it? I haven't volunteered.
Yeah, echo.
Echoic, yeah. Echoics are pretty
Echoic.
darn easy. So what program that we do is based around echoics?
Verbal M.
Verbal in. Yeah. So if you have it, so the way questions related to this topic will generally be is they'll describe someone working with a child and say, what is this person working on? Tax, mans, echoics, or whatever. And so if they're working on verbal in, they're pretty much working on echoics, for sure.
You're going to answer the question. I'll answer the question. You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
Aaron,
Intraverbal.
interverbal. Yep.
Well, that ought to do it. Using up done
Sydney.
Which one?
And
So not the echoic,
Right?
not internal state.
No.
Tact.
Just you saw something, you made a comment about it. So there you go.
Take your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape!
And
Man.
yep. You demanding something, you're unhappy about something, you want something taken care of. Okay, good. There's a bunch more. It's on the website, so if you want to play with some more and test yourself, there's 6 more in there. The answers are at the end of the video, so you can watch that. Let's see. Oh, okay. Back to well, wait. Let me say this first. Here's the quick and dirty rule. If a therapist is teaching a child to request something, then they're probably teaching manding. And if a therapist teaches a child to label something, then they're probably teaching tacting. Just know that rule of thumb. The SD and how you prompt it and how you get it going may involve a lot of interverbals, where you're like, well, wait, that's all interverbal. It's not really tacting and manding. For the sake of the questions, if they're trying to get to the point where the child is asking for something, it's manding. If they're trying to get to the point where the child is labeling something, it's tacting. So even if they're giving interverbal SDs or interverbal prompts. So know that. And then it's hard to teach, it's hard to teach manding. It's hard to really teach manding because you have to know what a child wants, theoretically, to really teach them to mand. You have to know their internal state to know if they're really manding or if you're just teaching them to kind of like say what you're saying. And so there's this cute trick that a lot of researchers have done studies, have used and replicated because I think it makes them happy. It's called the interrupted chain. And what you do is you teach a child to do a behavior, an activity that involves multiple steps and multiple materials. So you might teach a child to make chocolate milk. So you gotta get out the milk, and you gotta get out the chocolate sauce, and you got a cup, and you got a spoon, and you pour the milk in, you pour the syrup in, and you stir it, and so on. And you remove something from you don't give them one of the materials. So the child will say, okay, make chocolate milk, and the child goes, and they get out the chocolate milk, and there's no spoon. So they get to the point where they're supposed to, and they go like, I need a spoon. So you create this internal need for a spoon, and the child can label, I want the internal need for the spoon. It's called the interrupted chain. So know about interrupted chains. I'm not sure if that comes up in the test, but that is the classic way that you teach manding to at least higher functioning kids. So know that concept, but also know